are here.
are back.
And we're back, and we're live, and you know what we need to do?
We're not going to say it.
We're not going to say it, though.
Not yet.
Shh, I need complete concentration if I'm going to pull this off.
I need complete and utter concentration. Name the movie.
I don't know.
22 Jump Street.
Really?
Yeah, I can't promote that movie, though. It's inappropriate. It is hilarious, though. Brad, how are you?
I'm good. I think I did something wrong here.
Did you break it?
I may have done something wrong. But
I can't start what we're supposed to be starting right now.
really,
Yes.
I can't get out. Hey, we're not trying to ignore you. We're just trying to get our phones to work.
Hello?
How are you?
Is it me you're looking
This
for?
is definitely not what you want to be doing right now.
Is it something in my
just
eyes?
stop.
I don't know the line.
Just stop.
Is it? Do
Yeah.
you want to serenade them?
I do not want to serenade them. I think we ought to just go ahead and get started.
Let's go ahead and get started, because
Yeah.
we're ready to go.
Yeah, hold on. I still got to try to fix this.
Okay, I'm going to get started. So before we get started with our message tonight and what the topic is, we're going to do our brain teaser. And Brad loves to make fun of me for not knowing any words that he talks about.
know,
What did you say last time? Idiom?
Idiom. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not even listening because I finally figured out how to start my watch party.
Shocker. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So we
Okay.
talk all the time about making fun of each other for not knowing words.
There was something today you even said that I said something and
Well,
you
we
had
can't
no
repeat it.
you you had no clue what we were
I
talking
just
about.
didn't want you to repeat it.
I don't remember it.
Okay. Anyway,
Anyway,
Brad uses language that most of his generation would know. I
And-
use
and you
language
don't-
that
and you
most everyone would know.
no, because I don't understand half the things you
True.
and Trevor say.
So I decided to give you a question
Okay.
of a word
Yes.
that was formed probably actually the generation after me.
Really?
Yes. So here's your
A Gen,
question,
a Gen
Brad.
Z?
A Gen Z phrase.
Okay.
So
It's
Brad,
a phrase or
it's a word.
okay, it's a word.
What does, and I want to see it in the comments, what does yeet mean according to Urban Dictionary?
Yeet.
What does
Could
yeet?
you spell that for me?
Y-E-E-T.
When you really get excited, is it Y-E-E-E-E-T? Yeet.
Sure.
That was
But
terrible.
that does not change the definition. What does yeet mean?
It means tremendous.
No.
It means awesome.
No.
It means yes.
No.
It means you're a dork.
Well, maybe.
What does yeet mean?
So,
What?
according to Urban Dictionary, which is Trevor's favorite site for words, right, Trevor? He lies. He was telling me last
You
week.
don't have this ready?
Well, I've got screen time on my phone, and now it's not working. To yeet means to throw something aggressively. Like, yeet. Do you remember the Simba, the Mufasa thing where the baboon was throwing Simba
Yeah.
over the egg?
Yeah. That was awesome.
I sent that to one of our producers tonight. I texted him that GIF. So, all right. So, Brad, you're 0-1 for the year.
That's terrible.
That is terrible.
That's terrible. Hey, welcome everybody to I can't say it.
Generationally.
You know what I mean.
Generationally speaking.
Thank you very much. My name is Brad Maddox, and I happen to be the lead pastor here at Crossbridge Community Church. This is my good sidekick, Mr. Jordan Chitwood, who happens to be the young adults pastor, and we're excited about tonight.
We are excited about tonight. We are going to look at something that is kind of a topic that, especially what we'll look at, my generation struggles with.
Right.
And then the next generation, we believe, just based off research, is going to struggle a lot with.
Right.
And something that yours didn't necessarily
We did not
struggle
yeah,
with.
Yeah, when we started talking about this, it was something that I didn't quite get. And I want, well, we'll go into that later.
Yeah, so what we're going to be looking at tonight is a question that we receive all the time is, Jordan, Brad, Crossbridge, how do I know I'm pursuing my purpose? How do
Right.
I know what my calling is? Why do I feel so miserable? I just feel like I'm going through the motions. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm in the waiting game. What is my purpose?
And one of the things that we talked about today was the difference between a calling and purpose.
Yes.
And we really came up to the understanding of, honestly, it may be a little different way of looking at things, but they're basically the same thing. So
Yeah.
when we talk about calling, when we talk about purpose tonight, we're basically talking about the same thing. Now,
Yeah.
a calling may be more of a spiritual way to say, hey, you hear
What
all
are
the
you
time, is
destined to do?
God is calling me into doing this, and I feel like
Yes.
I'm being led by God to make this change in a career, in a ministry, and whatever it may be.
Yeah,
But your purpose is really the same thing because God's giving us our purposes also.
exactly. And I think that's the main part. And that's kind of going to be the theme of what
So
we
it's going to be
look
kind of
at.
interchangeable tonight, just so you don't
Yeah.
get confused.
Yeah, and so if that's a question that you've wrestled with, or you're wrestling with now, man, I feel stuck in my career, I feel stuck in my job, I don't feel like I'm getting fulfilled. We hope that this is helpful but it's also going to be challenging. We're going to push back a little bit
Yeah.
on some common misconceptions.
Right.
So why don't you start us off
yeah,
with some statistics,
And the stats actually say this is that 85% of people basically hate their job.
which is crazy.
80
According to Gallup poll.
A Gallup poll, 85% hate their job, which means only 15% really feel engaged. As Forbes, I think it was Forbes that actually
Forbes
said
that did that.
they feel. Let me just read it here. It says that they have this deep connection, this passion for their work. It's they feel like they're driving innovation and moving their company forward, or even your ministry forward if you're in ministry. But it's one of those things that only and it's almost sad.
It's
15%.
It's also terrifying. That 15% of people in the world, and this was Gallup did the entire world.
Yeah.
So they pulled from North Korea, South Korea. They pulled from North Africa. They pulled from all over the world, and 85% are miserable and hate their jobs where they're at.
Yeah.
And like you said,
and so obviously the people listening to this are saying, yeah,
there's a good
that's
majority.
me. Oh man, I hate my job.
Yeah.
And so as you're thinking about generations, I think back. It seems like your generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs, are affected a little bit more about this, and maybe it's just because we've been in the workforce longer.
Mhm.
Many of us have moved up the ladder, if you will, and maybe are doing things. But still, explain. Do you think that's a trend that's going to continue to grow, and why?
Yeah, no. So generationally speaking, I actually have seen for a long time that my generation and then Gen Z, the next generation, struggle a lot with what a lot of people will call the waiting game.
Okay.
And that's just kind of the phrase we're going to coin and use
Sure.
tonight, of where you know that maybe you have to go to work, pay the bills, okay, but you feel called, you feel like you have this purpose, you are driven to do something different than what you're actually doing. And I see a lot of my peers, a lot of our young adults struggle with being in that quote-unquote waiting game,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they're not in the waiting game and they're just going through the motions, but God really wants them to be there.
Right.
And this is why I think it's so difficult for my generation to see through some of that. One is because of lacking resources.
Okay.
Because we, especially with technology, especially with really being given permission to dream bigger, better, bolder things, especially, even just theological discussions. A lot of your generation, like we've talked about, is all, this is the way to believe it. This is why.
This is why it is. Here's what it is. Don't ask questions. Don't doubt. Just this is it. Just believe it.
Exactly. Yeah. But millennials were given permission to question everything.
Yeah.
But also try everything, I think, too.
Right.
And parents really pushed, hey, be what you want, be who you want, create. Now, the problem with that is our mindset is usually 20, 30 years farther ahead than what the means are, what we're able to accomplish because of resources, because of patience, I think is another thing. Let's be honest, us millennials lack patience.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it is I think our generation didn't expect to go and be in their dream career, straight out of college, straight out of and honestly, a lot of my generation didn't even go to college.
Yeah,
true. I didn't go to college.
Yeah,
and so it's one of those things that it wasn't an expectation. I think the expectation now is I go get a good degree, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make six figures.
Yeah.
I'm going to be at the height of my game, and so we didn't. I don't think I expected that. A lot of our generation didn't expect that we knew it was going to take some time.
Yeah.
Where I think there's a little more of an instant gratification thing, that is everything's so instant in your generation that
it's on
we want it.
demand.
We want it now.
Exactly.
And so, and I think that's, for those of us in my position, that we have to understand it's a different culture than what it was back then.
Yeah.
And we've just got to understand that.
Yeah. It is so rare. Trevor and I both got hired out of college.
Right.
And that's a rare commodity, right?
I know what you
One
mean.
of those words?
It's not the right word, but it's good enough.
It's close enough. That's rare.
Right.
Especially when you see a lot of my young adults that graduate with a degree.
Right.
And then they're stuck like nobody's hiring, especially with the radio or
Right.
with ministry even.
Right.
It'd be very difficult.
And it's one of those things, we were actually talking about this before we came on, and we were talking about just my life.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I'm doing what God called me to do right now. I'm fulfilling a purpose that I never saw this thing coming. I really never thought a full-time, never even crossed my mind later, or, earlier in life.
Yeah, did you ever see yourself as a lead pastor?
Absolutely not. It was
not even 3 months ago.
Not,
saw yourself as
exactly.
lead.
As a matter of fact. But I was telling you, it was 45 years.
Yeah.
I was 45, 46
You're
years
showing
old.
your age a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. When I first had my call, if you will, that I felt like God was saying, you need to leave what you're doing and go into full-time ministry.
Yeah.
And so I look back now and I see how God was preparing me all the way through. And like I said, I started a business and was at work right out of high school.
Yeah.
Okay. So at 18 years old until I was 45, I can't do that math really quick. 27 years, whatever. Is that right?
27 years.
I did that.
Man, faster than I did.
You know, it was kind of a waiting game
Yeah,
to a certain degree.
it was.
And I can look back now and say, this is how God was prepping me. This is where some of the things that happened. And even after I got into ministry, you know, some things fell apart. Things didn't work out exactly how I thought. But again, it was all God preparing me to be in where I am now.
Yeah, and so many of us, I think there's a few feelings that we might have. One, we have no idea what we want to do with our lives.
Right.
And that's a struggle that we'll talk about, a few next steps you can take a little bit over. If you're like, hey, I don't even know what I'm passionate about. The second area I think people struggle with is they know exactly what they want to do, but no opportunities are arising. And they're kind of like what you talked about, where
Right.
you when we were talking before, you're like, hey, for 13 of those years, when I had one job that was paying the bills, it was a good lifestyle.
Yeah, I had yeah.
But you said, yeah, but I knew that this wasn't exactly where I was wanting to be.
Yeah, there was a job that I was making very good money in, having a great lifestyle. I was working here when I got married.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I knew this wasn't the end.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be there. Honestly, it was one of those things that I hated to go in every day.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a discouraging thing. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It was a frustrating thing more than it was a discouraging thing for me.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, connecting with the two areas. Again, the one area of I don't know what I want to do, and the two, I know what I want to do, but I feel like I'm just waiting so long. And we're going to look at a story in the Bible. It comes from 1 Samuel chapter 16, and this is the story of David. And this was, made known to me, the significance of David being anointed, being called into what you might call kingship, okay, by God, anointed as king, and how significant this story really is for kind of our topic tonight. Okay, so we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. We're going to start in verse 5, and this is what Samuel writes. He says, Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" Jesse responds, "There is still the youngest. He is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Samuel then went to Ramah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of reading.
That is a lot, but it's powerful
the story
too.
is great. There's several things in there I think we can look at, and one is that it struck me that Jesse didn't even bring up the son. This can't be.
He was a nobody.
It can't be.
Yeah.
It can't be David.
He was the youngest one.
Youngest
he
one.
was working in the field.
Yeah. So he didn't even get to come to the table at
No.
first.
Yeah, and I think it was significant that the Lord kept saying it's not about outward appearance.
Yes.
Well, then what stuck out to me was then Samuel describes
Him.
David's outward appearance.
Right.
And I always thought that was interesting.
But the other thing is, I think sometimes is that as you're looking at, here I am stuck in a job. Here I am not doing what I want to do.
Yeah,
The thing that you can do is pursue God,
exactly.
because when all these other brothers are coming before Samuel, it says that he's looking at the heart, not the outside.
Yeah,
And so if your heart is, that's what you're working on all those times that, hey, I don't like what I'm doing. I'm not where I am. The thing that you can do is you can just get closer and closer in your relationship with Jesus.
yeah. And so David was called probably in his early teenage years.
Right.
Okay, he was called by God to be the king. Brad, when did David actually become the king?
It was like 30 years, wasn't it?
30 years according to 2 Samuel 5. 5? Yeah, 2 Samuel 5:4 says that David did not become king until he was 30 years old.
And here's the interesting thing too, if you remember that story at all, is that Saul was chasing David,
Yeah.
and trying to kill him and what have you. There were several times that David could have actually killed Saul and become the king,
Yeah.
and would have had the people
love that.
behind
True.
him, but yet he wouldn't do it.
Yes.
And so I'm going to do it in God's timing,
in God's way.
in God's
even.
way. I'm not going to do it in my way. And I think so often what we try to do is we try to force ourselves.
Exactly.
I want it now. I want it fast. I want to get to there and not go through all the tough times, not all the learning experiences, the places that I don't want to be, where God is actually probably shaping and molding someone,
Absolutely.
and you can't bypass that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, going off of that, with David, as soon as David was called, so he went back to being a shepherd. Then, shortly after that, his brothers went off to war, and David followed them off to war to provide meals to them.
Right.
Okay. Then he fights Goliath. Then he becomes Saul's personal servant. Then he becomes a general of an army. Then he runs from Saul because he ticks him off.
Right.
Because Saul starts to see, wow, this guy's legit. Then he becomes king. He's not just sitting around going through the motions. He is
Right.
taking steps and he is working, doing whatever. He was playing the harp for King Saul.
Yes.
Like, this is a guy who was content with being uncomfortable and doing whatever God asked him to do.
Yeah, and that, and we hear of David being a man after God's own heart.
Own heart, yeah.
And so again, it comes back to that heart thing.
Yeah.
Is if you're in a place that I don't want to be, I don't think this is it. What can I do? What can I work on? That is, man, just again growing your relationship.
Yeah, so you got to think, another example is Peter. Okay, you got to think of Peter, who was, a fisherman probably until his mid-20s.
Right.
And then out of nowhere, he's called by Jesus to come and be with me, which was probably 15 years past when most young boys or girls would start following a rabbi or a
Right.
teacher.
Right.
And he's like, whoa, what? But I think that all of that, and you see all the time, all the examples that Jesus used of fishermen or of, that type of character that it took, that Jesus or God was molding Peter into a future leader of the church.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful is often we get stuck in that waiting
Right.
game.
And I think the one thing I want to make sure we get to is something we also talked about today is that people, if you're feeling stuck, I think that was very helpful. But there's also a thing of making the right decisions. That,
Yeah.
man, what if I don't do what God's calling? What if I miss it?
Yeah, what if I miss the one
thing,
path that God has in store for me?
Exactly. And so just talk to that a little bit, because I think for some reason your generation struggles with this a little bit more than what my generation ever did.
Absolutely, yeah. And so this is actually something that our terrible, wonderful youth pastor and I had a great conversation with when I was in high school and I was dating my now wife. Okay?
Right.
And I asked Trevor, I said, hey, how do I know if Marissa's the one? Okay, how
Right.
do I know if God has her for me? Like, she's the one. And Trevor and I had this great conversation of why do we think that God has the one picked out for us or the right job picked out for us? God's not concerned about what we do as much as who we do it with, and that's the who is being God.
Absolutely.
And not the who like the person in our life.
Explain that one more time, because
Yeah.
I think that could be easily missed.
Yeah, so God's not concerned about having the right person as
Or
much,
the right, or even
the
the right job.
as much
or
as being
career.
paired with the right heart of being paired with God.
Absolutely.
And so I think so often we say, man, I'm not going to date this person because they're not the one. So, like, for an example, with my mom and my dad, okay, my dad ended up passing away.
Right.
Okay. My mom is not dating right now, okay? But down the road, if she ever did want to date and remarry, well, was my dad not the one? Is this new one
Right,
the one?
right.
See, so I think God is so much more, and same with careers.
Exactly.
You've changed your job so many times.
Yeah, exactly. I've been through I don't know how many of them. It's ridiculous. But I had a college, someone who just graduated high school. It was several years ago. Come up to me and start talking. Her parents actually asked me to talk to her a little bit, and she was saying, I just don't, I've got this school and this school and this school that I'm thinking about. I don't really know what to do. I can't make the decision. I just
Yeah.
don't want to make. I don't want to make the wrong
I
decision.
want to make the wrong decision.
And I told her, I said, God can redeem anything.
yeah.
And I don't. I said, she was so stressed about. I want to make sure I'm doing what God wants me to do. I don't think God necessarily cared about what. I think He could have worked with her in any school that she went to.
Exactly.
And when I told her that, it was sort of like she just went.
Yeah.
And I said, even it's kind of like shooting an arrow at a target. You shoot the arrow and you miss it. God has this amazing way of taking the target, the arrow out of the target, and putting it where He wants it to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea with our jobs.
Absolutely.
Where we were talking, I could even just have ended up at another church on staff. And I believe I'm supposed to be here right now.
Right.
But if I was at another church, God would have used me all the
Absolutely.
same.
Absolutely.
And there is part of that where God might be calling us somewhere else.
Now there is another side of this also.
Yeah,
Is when you're living outside of what God is wanting you to do. If you're
Exactly.
not the lifestyle, you're not pursuing Him.
yeah,
Yeah, then there are some consequences of some of our decisions that we make. There's no question. It's
Yeah.
not that, hey, God's just going to make everything all work out.
yeah,
You still have to be pursuing Him, wanting to be in a relationship with Him, understanding, and listening and things. Not that you're not going to make mistakes,
exactly.
but you can't have it both ways. You can't have one foot in and one foot out also.
Yeah, you have to be all in
Right.
and saying, God, this is where I'm at. I'm going to be all in for you. And if I need to be somewhere else, do something else, start chasing something else, then I will. But I'm going to be all in for you right now.
Right.
And there's actually a quote that
Yeah.
is powerful that we want to share. So, Brad, why don't you read this quote?
And it's actually from Phil Vischer. If you don't know who Phil Vischer is, he was a creator of VeggieTales.
Yeah.
He started a big idea, an amazing story, business-wise and things. You can't get into all that, but I ran across this quote, and now the pastor actually posted it on Facebook this week, and I stole it, and I just love
Oh,
this.
wow, we stole something.
Yeah, well, I stole it from him. So anyway, here's what it says, and read this along, because the more I read it, the more powerful it becomes. And here's
Yeah.
what it says. It says, we're drinking a cocktail that's a mix of Protestant work ethic, the American dream, and the gospel. And we've intertwined them so completely that we can't tell them apart anymore. Our gospel has become a gospel of following your dreams and being good so that God will make all your dreams come true. So I had to peel that apart. I realized I'm not supposed to be pursuing impact. I'm supposed to be pursuing God. And when I pursue God, I will have exactly as much impact as He wants me to have. That is
That'll preach.
I'm telling you what, you're going to want to go back and freeze this and look at that quote and write it down, because
Yeah.
unpacking that is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's so cool because it really just kind of affirms what we were just talking about, this idea that you might have these dreams to be great.
Right.
Okay, these dreams to do something more. How can God use you where you're at,
Yes.
you know?
And the other thing that happens sometimes, I think we look at all these great things that we think we need to be doing, and these grandiose things of I should be up front, I should be preaching, and you see these other people making a huge impact. Your job right now may be making a small impact in one or two people's lives,
Yeah,
and that's as powerful and as in the middle of God's will as anything.
yeah. Now let us emphasize, sometimes that sucks.
Yeah.
You know? You might even be looking at us and saying, wow, I could be doing such a better job than Jordan. Probably. You could. But sometimes it's in the middle of that, what we call
Yeah.
it a grind sometimes, of just working, that you're molded into what God has.
And back to this quote, I was a little convicted because I can't tell you how many times I've stood up here and saying, you want your life to make an impact. You want to
Yeah.
do this. And there's truth to that.
yeah,
But the way you make an impact
yeah. I
is
love
by
that.
pursuing God,
I love that. Yeah.
by pursuing God with all your heart, to become an actual follower, as Jesus put it. And when you start looking at the way Jesus called people to live and actually lived, man, it calls us to a whole nother standard.
Yeah.
And most of us are not willing to do that.
Most of us, yeah. I'd be willing to bet 85%
Right,
who are feeling miserable right now,
right,
plus the 15%.
right, exactly.
Everybody, I think when we truly, especially living in an on-demand culture, we don't even understand half of what it takes to live for Jesus.
Right,
We talk about that all the time. Is, man, we're still missing the mark.
Right, exactly.
Where God really wants everything. Hey, and this is actually something I've been thinking about this week. Why would God trust me with the big if I'm mishandling the small
That-
right now?
Tremendous.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's same with finances.
Yes.
It's same with my job, with my wife. Why would God trust me with a child someday if I'm struggling in these
Yeah.
areas right
If I'm
now?
not satisfied
Exactly.
doing what I'm doing now and making a small impact, how's He going to allow me to have a bigger impact?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the question I think we need to wrestle with ourselves is, what about my situation right now is really causing the issue?
Right.
You know, am I feeling stuck? Am I in the waiting game? Am I miserable?
And it goes back to what Paul says, I can be happy in any circumstance.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when you say happy, again, understand that we're talking about a peace and a joy and a contentment of,
Yeah.
and that comes from being where God wants you to be and understanding God is working out your life story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took David 20 years
Exactly.
to get there.
So if some people are sitting here saying, you know what, I do hate my job, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm scared to death to make a decision, next steps.
yeah. So a few next steps as we wrap up tonight. First, whatever situation you're in. Maybe you love your job. Maybe you're like, man, I love my job and I'm terrified God's going to call me to something different. Okay.
And that's happened to me twice.
Yeah, I know it has. That's why I brought it up. That could be the case too. Wherever you're at, we want you to private message us, okay? Shoot us an email or Facebook message us. Get in contact with us. We have a Next Steps pastor, Kim, okay? But then also we could, if you're more comfortable with me, if you're more comfortable with Brad, some of you might like Trevor more. Not sure why, but if you do, we'll put you in contact with Trevor, okay?
I suppose we have to.
If we have to. And so there's just those different things. Private message us, and then that will bring us to the second thing that we usually do. Usually when people are wrestling with what's my purpose, what's my calling, what am I struggling with, we always love to do a few personality
Absolutely.
tests.
And, we do a DISC profile to give you a personality test, and this is crucial for understanding how God has wired you. There's some gift tests that you can also
Some
do.
spiritual gifts, some
gift
strength
tests.
finders tests that we've done in the past.
There's all kinds of things that when you start understanding how you're put together, why you're feeling way something you're feeling, why you interact with other people because of personality, I'm telling you, it can change the way you look at your job, your relationships, your marriages, the way you react with your
entire
kids,
life. Yeah.
your entire life. It's eye opening.
Yeah, and this is probably this last next step that we want to give is probably, in my opinion, the biggest next step. Okay,
Yeah.
And this is one that a lot of us struggle with because often we want to wait to do this until our lives are in the right place,
Right.
or our lives are fixed, or we know what we want to do. What we want to suggest is get involved in serving. Okay, and I'm not making an ad for Crossbridge. Okay, that'd be great for you to volunteer
Sure.
here, but a lot of people want, again, the full meal, the full course meal right away. Sometimes you need to work your full-time job and then pursue your passions and volunteer work elsewhere.
Right.
So like if you love sports, this with one of my young adults I was just meeting with, loves sports and loves kids. He's stuck working at a job that pays the bills, so we're going to get him involved with C3 Sports.
Right.
Some people love working with the homeless people, homeless shelter, okay? Or love serving the needs of others, okay? Get involved in something like that. There's never a better time to use your gifts in another area than
And it
now.
may even be an area. The very first serve I ever did in a church, it was an Awana program. You probably don't have any idea what that is. But
Is that like a yeet?
yeah, it's kind of like a yeet.
Okay.
But it was basically a bunch of little kids in a big room playing these game competitions between each other and things like that. And I thought I'd kill them.
Yeah.
And
You
it
still
wasn't
think
me.
that
It wasn't.
about a lot of kids.
It really wasn't me. But it led me to another serve, to another serve, to another serve, to
Exactly.
the point that they asked me to run a basketball program in the church.
You're crazy.
And I said, all right, I'll do that. Which led me to a point of feeling God calling me into sports ministry full time.
Yeah.
And so if I wasn't serving, if I wasn't trying these things, God would not have been able to move me into that direction.
Yeah, it's one of our individuals, ladies that run some of our social media, posted the verse this week. I think it was from 1 Peter that just says, hey, you all have these gifts. You all have these passions, these talents. Start using them in
Yes.
any way you can.
Any way you can.
And whether it's serving Crossbridge, whether it's volunteering somewhere, whether maybe you just want to get involved in something, start small. Like we were talking about, God can't trust you with the big picture if you're not mastering the doodling
Right
now.
Exactly. It may be the rescue mission. If outside of churches, it may be the rescue mission, maybe Cares House.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of places that you can volunteer.
Yeah,
that
and the
people are
reason
looking
we
at.
like to do the personality test first is because that might give you some of your interests.
Right.
Of like, hey, this is what I'm interested in. So, hey, thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
tonight as we talk about this. We look forward to next week. We're going to dive into another topic, but I actually wanted to give a promo. Tomorrow we are posting another podcast
Yes.
officially, and it is called Through the Lens.
Which is an
And
amazing
you've seen
name.
a promo. Yeah, it is amazing. Our youth pastor is doing that with the Generation Z.
Yes.
Okay, Gen Z.
Gen Z.
So there's going to be middle schoolers to start for the first few episodes, and then we'll weave in some high schoolers and stuff.
Right.
But basically, it's a podcast of how does Generation Z view the world,
Right.
view life, view faith, spirituality, sexuality, life, science, all of it.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good. So tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, find the video either on YouTube or you can listen to it on Spotify and iTunes. 6 o'clock tomorrow. It's going to be great. Thank you so much for joining
Hey,
us.
give a quick promo about Sunday.
Oh, a quick promo. I'm preaching this Sunday. There's the promo.
There you go. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we'd love for you to join us at 9 o'clock or 10:30. I'm talking about money. Did you cringe? So did I. I'd love to
Exactly.
see you then.
All right.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great week.
Have a great weekend.